Welcome into Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy Football Podcast. Tera Roberts here along with Pat Fitzmaurice and Billy Muzio. And today is our ranking show. We'll be going through the Fantasy Pros rankings tiers for week 4. Pat and Billy are going to be providing their thoughts on the players in each tier. And honestly, guys, there is no better pair to provide analysis on these rankings because Billy was the number 4 overall most accurate in-season fantasy football ranker in 2022 and has done consistently well in our accuracy competition. And we'll talk about this week as well. And Fitz was the most accurate in-season weekly ranker in 2020 and has been consistently among the most accurate rankers in fantasy football. You can find Billy at FF Muzio and Pat at Fitz_FF. And you can find me at It's Tera Time. So buckle in, guys. This insight is going to be incredibly invaluable for your fantasy matchups this week. And before we get started, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications as well. Now, let's talk about week 3 real quick. Yeah, Pat, how things work out for you? How do you feel heading into week 4?
Yeah, I mean, it was okay, mixed bag as far as fantasy teams results. I've got a few 0-3 teams that I'm not feeling great about, but there's some good teams to couple of undefeateds. So yeah, I'm optimistic. It was a decent rankings week. It was a pretty good week for player props and NFL wagers. So yeah, I'm ready to get week 4 going. And Tera, our Packers play on Thursday night. What a great way to kick off the week.
Yes, I'm excited. I'm crossing my fingers and hopeful that we get for the Packers' sake and for just fantasy football's sake that we finally get Aaron Jones back and get the debut of Christian Watson, see what that offense looks like.
Yes. And it seems like both of those things are going to happen. So I can't wait to see what it looks like with all the pieces in place.
Super excited. Billy, how did week 3 rankings go for you?
Finished well. I'm back, baby. We had a number 1 RB finish, which was great. Finished 13th overall, and so like I said last week, refining the process as we get more data in. We start to understand what's happening a little bit more, and we can finally get some tangible evidence of what coaches are actually doing here in the NFL, and be able to plug it into the sheet to get a better algorithm for projections moving forward.
Awesome. You love to see it. All right, guys, we are going to jump in with our top 20 players right now. You can check those out here. And by the way, our consensus rankings and tiers can be found at fantasypros.com/rankings. And you can also see the tiers on video podcast at youtube.com/fantasypros. So make sure that you check that out if you're listening to the podcast. So we've got our top 20 players. Oh, man. Very interesting group here. Guys that we love to see. Pat, is there anything that stands out within this top 20 for you?
Tera, it's a little surprising to me to see Kyren Williams at RB10. The usage has been great. No denying that, but he's averaging 3.6 yards per carry and 4.1 yards per target. It feels like this heavy-duty usage is unsustainable. Like, I feel like there's something coming in the Rams backfield, and I'm not sure what exactly, but Kyren is 5'9" and 195 pounds. Like, I don't think he can keep playing 85% of the Rams' offensive snaps. It just doesn't seem remotely sustainable, and even though I fell backwards into him in a couple of leagues and, drafted him in the late rounds, and it's worked out really well, I'm starting him everywhere, but I have him ranked RB16, so I'm definitely below consensus on him. Raheem Mostert, like, how high is too high for him with Achane now announcing his arrival in week 3? I get it. Mostert just scored 4 touchdowns and the Dolphins dropped a 70-burger on the Broncos, but RB8 seems maybe a little fanciful. I don't know. And let me ask you guys about the return of Alvin Kamara. ECR has him at RB19, and so do I. I don't know. Is that too conservative? Like, I just don't know what the workload is going to look like in his first week back. But maybe with Jamal Williams out, it's going to be a big workload right away. Tera and Billy, you guys have any thoughts on that? Tera?
Yeah, it's interesting to me. I mean, based off last week, it didn't really feel like anyone popped out. I know we expected and we kind of, hoped that there would be some kind of initial, maybe limited surge from Kendre Miller stepping up as the rookie, and he didn't really give us anything. We've seen before that Tony Jones Jr. has just been someone that when there are healthy backs, they just don't trust and really utilize. So, I mean, it's possible that he comes back into aggressive workload. You just kind of get concerned what he is ready to immediately step into. Billy, how about you?
Yeah, I'm actually higher than ECR on Alvin Kamara, and it's just they have a lack of running backs right now, and we've seen the probably the lack of consistency from who is running the ball currently. I mean, Tony Jones has been less than stellar. We've even seen Taysom Hill get his fair share of touches. We know that he's needed, and this offense needs another weapon desperately. They have not got the production from the tight end they were hoping for either. And so, Kamara last season in 15 games saw 77 targets. I think that we're going to see him heavily utilized in the passing game again. I think he's going to see probably 48 to 52% of the rushing share, and we're going to see him dominate all the passing down. So that's what's going to prop up his fantasy output, and I think that he's going to consistently step into that 65 to 70% opportunity share right out the gate and ramp up close to 80% as the season progresses. And so I'm higher on Alvin Kamara versus ECR.
You mentioned those passing downs. I've been so hopeful that we can finally get the revival of the Alvin Kamara receptions that we've been desperately seeking for. He's been used so much on early downs and getting, heavy utilization on the ground, 20 carries and just very limited in reception. So if we can finally get that switch and they can utilize him the way that he's supposed to, I'm with you. Maybe we can be a little bit higher. Is there anyone else that kind of jumps out with you in this top 20?
Yeah, Jahmyr Gibbs. He's coming in right now at ECR, I think it's 11, and he just has not had the opportunity to be able to produce. And we all love the talent. We know that he is in a prime situation to exceed, but they just haven't given him the opportunity share that we would hope for. I mean, 37.3% on the season. He's only seen the snap share of 38.6%, which is RB44. Hasn't seen as many carries as we'd hope for either. And so if we continue to see this usage, or I should say lack thereof, we're doing this DeAndre Swift dance again, and he's going to consistently underperform it versus ECR and where we want to put him in our rankings based upon the talent and the situation.
Pat, how about you with Jahmyr Gibbs?
Yeah, we were talking about this backstage, Tara. We have seen our Green Bay Packers get chewed up by this type of running back. It seems like this archetype of running back, the space back, kind of destroys the Packers, or at least that's been the case, it seems like, for the last decade or so. I don't know. I have him in my top 12, and I don't feel great about it. Billy's probably right. I should move him down.
It's such an uncomfortable ranking. It's weird, and then we got to figure out David Montgomery and all this. It is a mess, but hey, it's the Lions, so here we go. Is that the bias in me kind of peeking out right there? Maybe a little bit. All right, guys, we've got our top 20 here. We're going to jump ahead and go into the next grouping. Our C tier kind of rounds out there with Brian Robinson and jumps into the D tier. We've got Jerome Ford and Isaiah Pacheco, Rachaad White, Devin Achane, James Conner, Najee Harris. Yeah, let's talk about James Conner. Kind of pull him out right here. ECR has him at RB24. Pat, you've got him RB22. Billy, you've got him RB19. Both of you feeling a little bit more positively, and I like to see that as the resident James Conner lover here. Talk to us about James Conner. Pat, what are your thoughts?
I understand the feelings of trepidation that someone might have about starting James Conner against this brick wall of a 49ers run defense. They were great against the run last year. They have allowed a league low 111 rushing yards to running backs so far this year. I'm just trying to follow the volume here. And we have seen Conner as one of the few running backs getting true workhorse usage. He's averaging 17 carries a game and almost 20 touches a game. I mean, it's possible he gets 17 carries a game, or 17 carries in this game against the 49ers, and it results in like 36, 38 rushing yards. But still, in nearly every instance, I'm going to bet on the volume and sort of let the chips fall. I'd rather start Conner than a committee back on a better offense, and maybe he gets something going in the passing game. The 49ers have given up a league-high 21 receptions to running backs so far this year.
Billy, does the matchup, maybe is the matchup, is that what's kind of driving the ECR, pushing him back a little bit? We've got San Francisco been incredibly stout against the run, and, Are they going to force Joshua Dobbs to pass? He's been mildly successful thus far. What are your thoughts around it?
He has been mildly successful, and we just saw them come off and beat the Cowboys, and I think that surprised everybody. I think that was also holding his ranking down last week. I was higher than last week, and it just breaks down to what Pat said. It's volume, and volume is king in fantasy football. He's seeing 81.1% of the opportunity share. That's RB5 right now in the league. Snap share at 77.8%, which is RB7, and he's seen a total of 51 carries through the season so far, which is RB number 4. And so anytime you have this type of involvement, this type of usage, when we talked about this last week, it's going to prop up the overall numbers for fantasy success. And if we can get that touchdown, great. It's going to easily finish inside the top 20. And I don't necessarily think he needs to even land that touchdown in order to hit this number, just because the volume is so high. I mean, we're seeing him involved in the passing game. We're seeing him involved in the ground, and he's just being utilized all over the field. As long as he can stay healthy, he's in line for a massive workload this season.
We'll jump to another running back here that has been operating as a workhorse running back and maybe has a little bit of skepticism behind him as well, Rachaad White. You guys are on opposite sides here, so I can't wait to hear this. ECR has him at RB25. Pat, you were at RB28, and Billy, you were at RB20. Billy, let's talk wax poetically positively about Rachaad White.
He keeps coming up high in my model, and I keep manually adjusting him back just because we haven't seen the overall output to match where the model has him. I mean, week 2 was the only week that we saw it, but 68.3% of the opportunity share, which is RB15. He's at 73.9% of the snap share, which is RB10. We have actually seen them run 33.5 run plays per game, which is number 6 in the league. He has 34 carries throughout the beginning of the season, which is RB7. He's actually seen 7 targets, so that's top 20 as well. It's RB19. And so I love the usage. I mean, he's been inefficient with it so far, but I don't necessarily think it's been his fault per se. A lot of this is offensive line related. I do think that it's going to eventually, he's going to have to break one. And I guess I'm saying this as a Rachaad White truther, that I keep making up excuses. But at the end of the day, when we see this type of volume, it's bound to have some success. And I continue to put him inside the top 20 based on the volume alone. And if it bites me one more week, I'll have to keep manually adjusting the algorithm. But with this type of volume, it can't be ignored.
Pat, how about you? Any concerns around the volume? What's the hesitation here?
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, I feel I'm being contradictory in ranking James Conner inside RB2 range and Rachaad White outside RB2 range because, as Billy said, we're getting volume out of Rachaad White. I guess part of the reason I'm shying away, well, one is the matchup. I mean, the Saints have looked really, really good on defense. I think they're going to stamp themselves pretty soon here as a defense like you feel bad about when your players are going against them. They've allowed the 7th fewest rushing yards, and PFF has them graded as the 6th best run defense so far. But back to Conner versus Rachaad White, I think we know that Conner is a good player. Like, he is well above replacement level as a running back. And I don't know that we know that about Rachaad White yet. And I was very optimistic about him coming into the season. I think he's good, but we don't really know for sure yet. And the Buccaneers' run blocking has not been very good. I think that's going to be a problem against the Saints. And while Rachaad White does have 10 receptions so far, he's got those 10 receptions on 10 targets. So he's not getting the great usage in the passing game we were seeing last year. Baker Mayfield is not the check down machine that Tom Brady was. So White might not have quite the pass catching upside we believed he had.
It's kind of interesting too. I mean, it's been a very friendly schedule to start. Even Philadelphia, traditionally not a friendly matchup, but they've been dealing with injuries and things have been a little iffy with them. So yeah, there could be some cause for concern here. This D tier has a lot of players that we want to touch on here. So we'll jump to another one here with our player of the week. I guess we can call him that. Is the man of the hour, Devon Achane, I mean, coming off of that spectacular performance where he and Raheem Mostert just absolutely obliterated the slate, 18 carries, 20 or over 200 yards, 4 total touchdowns. I mean, it was absolute madness. And he's gone from a guy that was sitting on literally everyone's bench to a guy that we're now sitting here ranking at ECR RB26. And you guys, again, are kind of on opposite ends here. Pat, you've got him at RB29, Billy, RB24. So we're kind of sitting around that RB2, high end RB3 situation. So Pat, what's the feeling here around Achane?
Well, I'm fading him because he wants to be called Devon Achane rather than Achane. Achane is such a cool name. Why would you want to be called Achane? I just don't get that. No, yeah.
It's been hard. I mean, it's been hard to flip it, right?
I know. And, like when people would mispronounce his name or so I thought in the off season, I'm like, no, it's Achane. It's a great name. How could you blow that? No, as much as I love this guy and over the winter, like on the Fantasy Pros Dynasty podcast, I was saying how he reminded me when I watched him at Texas A&M of Warrick Dunn. And, viewers and listeners under 30 might not appreciate that, but Warrick Dunn was awesome back in the day. And this little, really fast guy who had exceptional contact balance. And I see the same thing with Achane. It's not just that he's fast, it's that he pinballs off tacklers. We saw that on his little shovel pass touchdown last week when, some guy hit him squarely and Achane just bounced off. So, I still worry, though, that he is not a lock for double-digit touches this week. Should Devon Achane be playing ahead of Salvon Ahmed? Yes, absolutely. But Mike McDaniel's already said that players on his team do not lose their spot on the depth chart due to injury. And if Ahmed comes back this week from a groin injury, I don't know what that does to Achane's role. And, if Ahmed is out again, I'm going to move Achane up. But, if he plays, I just worry the workload is not going to be the workload we think he should have.
Billy, what are there any concerns around you? Or are you feeling more positively about it? Is the return of Salvon Ahmed a potential concern?
No, I think the return of Salvon Ahmed is going to be great because he's going to be bringing him lots of water during the game to be able to support his elite fantasy output. So he's going to stay hydrated throughout week 4. I'm really looking forward to his fantasy production. Devon Achane, I was super high on going into the season. I mean, he's got Chris Johnson speed, 4.32 speed. This kid is fast, blazing fast. And how fast? He actually recorded the fastest miles per hour in week 3 at 21.93. Number 2 was Tyreek Hill. Number 3 was Raheem Mostert. Number 4 again was Tyreek Hill. And number 5 was also Devon Achane last week. So 2 of the top 5 fastest speeds. Everybody on the Dolphins hit this top 5. But I don't think it's going away. I don't think that you can keep a player of his magnitude off the field, or I should say, you can't keep him off the field for Salvon Ahmed after this type of production. I mean, he looked great, not only in the passing game, but on the ground. I mean, we're talking about a monster game. 203 yards on the ground. He had another 30 in the air, 4 total touchdowns. They drafted this kid. They have draft capital invested into him, 3rd round draft capital at that for the running back. And so they saw something in him prior to the season. I think they definitely saw it last week. And I don't think that that's going to change with Salvon Ahmed back.
Before we move on to the next player, football is back in full swing with another week of epic games. And who's got you covered on the action for every single one of them? DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. New customers can bet $5 on football and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. No one's missing out on the action this season. All DraftKings customers can take advantage of 2 new offers every game day this September. Get in on the NFL Week 4 action with DraftKings Sportsbook. Download the app now and use code FantasyPros at signup. New customers can bet just $5 and take home $200 instantly in bonus bets only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code FantasyPros. The crown is yours. All right, guys, let's jump back into the next player here. we're going to talk about one that everybody loves to debate about. It is Najee Harris. ECR has him at RB27. Pat, you've got him at RB24. And Billy, you've got him at RB25. So you guys are kind of, very close in lockstep there. You're feeling a little bit more positively than ECR. Pat, how are you feeling about Najee this week?
Oh, man, I'm trying to stay upbeat here, Tara, but it has been bad. And mea culpa, I was very much in on Najee Harris this year. And, as a result, I've got people outside my front door right now with torches and pitchforks ready to come for my head for recommending him. He was good in the second half last year, and I thought his offensive line was going to be a lot better with what the Steelers invested in it in the offseason. Has not been the case. Pittsburgh's offensive line has been pretty bad. PFF has them ranked 28th in run blocking so far this year. I mean, I think the appeal here is the matchup against the perennially bad Houston Texans run defense, which has already given up 5 touchdown runs to running backs. And you just hope that the fairly safe usage floor you get with Najee Harris. He had, 17 carries last week against the Raiders, only netted 65 yards. So actually 19 carries for 65 yards. Hopefully, if he gets 19 carries against the Texans, we're seeing him go over 100. I don't know if that'll be the case, but I'm, one more chance, Najee, or you're on our benches in week 5.
Yeah, the Texans. It's tough not to want to buy into that matchup with how they have been against the run. Billy, is it the matchup doing it for you that makes you push them a little bit higher than ECR?
I'm not a Najee guy. So the fact that I'm above ECR scares me on this one, because you can typically, there's death taxes and Muzio being lower on Najee than ECR are the most consistent things in the universe. And so the fact that I'm higher scares me. I'm a little concerned with what the algorithm kicked out. I'm probably going to take a deeper look into it because the usage hasn't been there. The efficiency hasn't been there. But to Pat's point, the matchup is cake this week. And so I'm assuming that that's what happened inside of the Excel sheet. But I just don't like what I've seen out of Najee. I don't like Jaylen Warren's continuous involvement inside of the passing game for a Najee Harris ranking. We've seen Jaylen Warren see 15.5% target share. And so if Najee continues to lose more and more and more of that, and he plods his way to 3.8, 3.9, 4 yards per carry, it's not going to look good for the fantasy stat line, even against Houston.
I feel like I need to adopt your attitude a little bit, being the, down on Najee. I try to coddle Najee a little bit, be a little bit more positive towards him. It's not working out. I need to drop that attitude and just get on board with being tougher and more critical of Najee. All right. That kind of wraps us up. We had a lot of D tier players to talk about. A very interesting, controversial tier. We'll jump into some E tier players now. We've got Breece Hall. RB30 is where he is at on ECR. Pat has him at RB26. Billy, RB33. So this is good. We've got a little bit of a different opinion here. Billy, RB33. Breece Hall. You're not feeling it?
Love Breece Hall, the player. Don't like the Jets right now. This team is in shambles. It looks like they're about to implode. We're seeing players fight on the sideline with coaches. We're seeing other players come out and call out the coaches in regards to backing the quarterback. And so we see this type of chaos inside of a locker room. It's never a good thing for a team, let alone the player who's only seeing 39.1% of the opportunity share. So until we can see closer to 40-50%, Breece Hall is just not going to be able to see the touches that he's going to need to be successful. We saw that one big run in week 1, and outside that, it's been pretty mediocre, subpar even. And I would say that it doesn't look like there's any bright horizons in the future. Snap share only 33.3% is RB47. Weighted opportunities of only 14.7, which is RB44. He's only seen 26 carries, so in 3 weeks, RB38. And so if we continue to see this misusage, then I have serious concerns about Breece Hall.
Pat, how about you?
I'd love to get into a big argument with Billy here on this, Tara, but it is probably my most indefensible ranking of any player for week 4. And I just have too much respect for the talent of Breece Hall to leave him outside my top 30. I'm begging Nathaniel Hackett to call more runs for Breece Hall. Like the Jets, their passing game is completely broken. Their run blocking grade is second in PFF's run blocking grades. I mean, it only makes sense. Like, you have to move the ball on offense, and Breece Hall is like your best chance to do that. Please give this guy the ball more and justify my probably unjustifiable RB26 ranking.
I get it. I get the justification. It's a tough one, really. And we'll move on to another tough one that is literally right behind him. Khalil Herbert. And this one has been up and down, and it's kind of a weird situation where we can't trust Khalil Herbert. We've got an ideal matchup. Like this Chicago-Denver matchup, I feel like is either going to be a fantasy bonanza, incredible, two teams beating each other's awful defenses up, or it's just going to be a hot mess and nobody produces anything. So you guys may be feeling the hot mess side of it because ECR has him at RB31. Pat, you've got him RB35, and Billy RB35. Pat, Khalil Herbert, is it going to happen this week or no?
Sign me up for the hot mess point of view, Tara. I just, Herbert has not gotten double-digit carries in a game this year. So far, 9, 7, and 7 carries through Chicago's first 3 games. Part of a two-man backfield. Roschon Johnson is there, and I can't help but feel like eventually the Chicago coaching staff is going to turn the dials toward Roschon Johnson in this backfield and just give him a bigger share. And now it is a good matchup. The Broncos defense just got blowtorched against the run with the Dolphins, and they weren't good against the Commanders either in week 2 when Brian Robinson had a pair of touchdown runs. But this Bears offense just isn't trustworthy right now.
Yeah, it's 2 weeks in a row the Broncos offense has allowed the overall RB1. And technically, beyond that with Raheem Mostert. So, Billy, how about you? What's the outlook here for Khalil Herbert in this matchup?
Yeah, it's just muddied waters. Pat was spot on. We're seeing a rotation in this backfield and the lack of efficiency just altogether for the Bears and moving the ball. And so when we see just reduced amount of plays, I mean, we're seeing not only a very limited amount of passing attempts, which I forewarned people about with this offense, but we're also seeing now a very limited amount of rushing plays per game. They only have 22 rushing plays per game, which is 25th in the league. They're not able to move the chains. We can't move the chains. We can't move the ball. They're not going to continue to be able to pound the ball on the ground, especially in this matchup this week. So they're going to be forced to throw the ball. And when we have seen who's been the preferred target, Roschon Johnson in the passing game, who's seen 13% of the target share, it does not bode well for Khalil Herbert's fantasy success this week. And so I do have some concerns and some doubts about Khalil Herbert. If they finally committed to the run, then I think that it's a different opportunity. But I don't think that they're going to commit to the run that much.
You just answered the question I was literally going to ask you. Does this, the Khalil Herbert skepticism, are you more positive about the potential for Roschon Johnson in this matchup?
Yeah, I think Roschon is the back to own in this backfield moving forward. I think that we've seen his success in the inside of the passing game. Like I mentioned earlier, 13% of the target share. He's only seen 23.9% of the carry share. If we can see that number get closer to 30 or 35%, then I think that he is more startable over Khalil Herbert. And it's already closer than people want to admit already. And so if we can just see him get a few more carries a game, I think that Roschon is probably going to just take over the job altogether and run with it. But I think the Bears will continue to mix in both backs in the meantime. But it'll be interesting to see what they do move forward. But passing game wise, Roschon is the back to own.
Now, guys, I want to play a who would you rather game here. Before we jump into this game, I want to talk about game time because football is back. It is week 4 and our fantasy season is in full swing. And while we love watching hours and hours of our favorite teams on TV, there is nothing better than catching a game live and in person. And the best way to get tickets to any of these games is on Game Time, the official ticketing partner of FantasyPros Fantasy Football, for last-minute amazing deals on tickets to see your favorite football team this September. Download Game Time. And as you've heard us say before, it's not just football. Game Time has tickets to baseball games, concerts, comedy shows across the country. So download the Game Time app and redeem code FantasyPros for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the Game Time app and enter code FantasyPros, all one word, for $20 off. No matter where you live, get out and have some fun this weekend. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, let's go ahead and jump into our game here. We're going to play Who Would You Rather? And the first one that I'm going to throw out to you guys is Dameon Pierce, who had a little bit of a better game last week. Things came together with him in terms of a little bit more opportunity. So Dameon Pierce or Jerome Ford coming off that positive performance last week.
I'm going to go with Ford. Slight edge. Man, I've got a new nickname for Dameon Pierce, Tara. I'm going to call him the Beekeeper because he is constantly being swarmed. Like, he gets the ball and tacklers are instantly swarming him. It's just so frustrating to watch. I don't think we can be judgmental about Dameon Pierce because this banged up Texans offensive line is just not giving him the blocking he needs. So give me Jerome Ford here.
Billy, how about you?
I'm going to back up Pat here and say Jerome Ford as well. Even in a tough matchup last year, he cashed in, or last week, I should say, he cashed in. His involvement in the passing game as well is going to continue to prop up those fantasy scores, and they have fully committed to him as a rusher. I do think Kareem Hunt is going to be active this week, which will eat into it a little bit, but to Pat's point, Dameon Pierce is just that line has been atrocious, and it's been hindering his overall output. And so I like the offensive line better in Cleveland. I like his opportunity share, and I'd lean Jerome Ford here.
I would love to disagree, but I can't. It is Jerome Ford for me as well. I mean, he didn't get a ton of production on the ground last week, but the fact that he actually gave us fantasy production against that Titans defense, which nobody else has been able to, it just made me feel so much more positively towards him and trusting him moving forward, despite, like you mentioned, Kareem Hunt potentially working in there as well. I still lean that direction. All right, we're going to do another Who Would You Rather here with Jerick McKinnon coming off of that multi-touchdown game or Ezekiel Elliott. Billy, which side do you prefer?
This is like asking me which outlet I want to stick the knife into, the left outlet or the right outlet. But if I have to choose here, I am going to lean with Ezekiel Elliott. We're going to get the revenge game narrative, but it also breaks down to just the overall opportunity. Saw 16 carries last week against the Jets, where we've seen McKinnon's involvement in the rushing game has been nearly non-existent. Only seen 3 carries so far throughout the season. You know, he's been seeing 2 to 3 targets a week, but that game script is not going to be in the passing favor. And so I think that Ezekiel Elliott and revenge game narrative against Dallas, I want to see him and what he's able to do. I don't think it's going to be a lot, but I do think that it's going to be more than Jerick McKinnon.
I love that you hit on the revenge game there for Ezekiel Elliott. You got to love the revenge games. Dallas defense has been incredibly stout. Maybe dealing with the major injury to Trayvon Diggs kind of, shook their core a little bit last week. But we did talk about James Conner's performance earlier and the strong game that he had against there. So maybe there is a little opening here for Zeke to come out and eat against this Dallas defense, get that nice revenge game. But Pat, is it Jerick or is it Ezekiel Elliott for you?
It's Zeke for me too. And maybe the increase in Zeke's workload was partly attributable to the Patriots feeling better about his conditioning after being around for a couple of weeks and, ramping up after basically missing all of camp. So, McKinnon is just so touchdown dependent. Last year, he averaged 7.5 touches a game, but he scored 10 touchdowns. Like, the touchdown luck was very fortunate. You'd think that wouldn't continue, but so far, 10 touches in 3 games, just 3.3 touches a game. He's already scored twice. But the thing is, if he does not get into the end zone for you, you are going to have a big donut hole in the middle of your lineup in scoring because he's just not going to get you anything if you don't get that touchdown out of him. So, yeah, give me Zeke this week.
It's risky. McKinnon is one of those ones. It's either boom or complete bust. All right, guys, that wraps things up for our running back rankings. If you have any questions about lineups or trades, we are live each and every Thursday on YouTube at 3 p.m. EST, 12 p.m. PST, taking your questions. And if you want to see more advice from Pat, check out his rankings. Just go to fantasypros.com/fits. And you can also make sure that you check out Billy's work as well at Player Profiler. Fantastic work there. You can find Billy at FF Muzio and Pat at Fitz_FF. And you can find me at It's Tera Time. Now that's it. That wraps up our show. For Pat Fitzmaurice, for Billy Muzio, I am Tera Roberts. Thank you so much for tuning in.